Hi, my name is Chun Wee, QAQC personnel from Project 60th Avenue Package 2. Today, I would like to talk about the topic for 4 cement render and tiles. This video presentation will be related more on the finishing and hollowness that happen on 4 cement render and tiles. For the introduction, floor is a structural component that provides a level of surface, and this surface will act as a support for occupants of buildings, furniture, and equipment. The most common type of floor finishing in construction is floor render and tilings. For the floor cement render is made up of 3 main components: lime, sand, and cement. This type of floor is generally used in residential, commercial, and industrial buildings. The method is cheap, durable, and easy to construct. The floor consists of 2 components. The first component is base concrete, and the second is topping or wearing surface. While tiles is a piece of hard wearing material that manufactured by using ceramic, stone, clay, and so on. Tiling is frequently used in construction due to its aesthetic view, reduce the chances of crack, and quick execution of flooring. Tiling can be manufactured and classified to a variety of shape, square, hexagonal, and so on, size, and thickness. For the objective, the first objective is to preview the root cause of finishing and hollowness for 4 cement render and tilings. The second objective is to study the impact of finishing and hollowness for 4 cement render and tilings. And the third objective is to explore the alternative to overcome the issue of the finishing and hollowness for 4 cement render and tilings. And this is the table of content. For the 2.0 is the introduction, 2.1 is objective, 2.2 is the table of content itself, and 2.3 is the finishing in 4 cement render and tilings. And for the sub, the 2.3.1 is the cost of the bed finishing in 4 cement render and tilings, and the 2.3.2 is the impact of bed finishing in 4 cement render and tilings, and the 2.3.3 is the ways to overcome the bed finishing in 4 cement render and tilings, and for 2.4 is hollowness in 4 cement render and tiling. 2.4.1 is the cause of hollowness in 4 cement render and tiling. 2.4.2 is impact of hollowness in 4 cement render and tiling. 2.4.3 is the ways to overcome the hollowness in 4 cement render and tilings. And for the 2.5 is the summary. 2.6 is the reference. Well, from this table content, you can clearly see that the main content was split up into 2 subtopics, and each topic will be reviewed in depth later on. The first course for bed finishing in 4 cement render and tiling will be pro workmanship. As we know, one of the major concerns in construction work will be workmanship. If the workmanship is bad, the render and tiling work will end up with a finished product that lacks quality. The second cause will be weather condition. For fall render, the wearing surface that exposed to sunlight before hardening will form a crack line that's similar like spider crack. The third cause will be the type of material used. For example, the type of sand used must have a fine texture. Cause sand only can be used in base layer, while the top layer should be used fine sand. Fine sand will make the surface of the render more smoothed. The second material is lime. Lime make the render self-rendering and self-curing. Choosing right lime will enhance the bonding of cement and help it setting and curing effectively. The last cause is wrong proportion of mixing. As we know, every product has its own ratio of making. The proportion of mixing for cement render is also taken into consideration. Excessive cement in cement render will affect the workability of the cement render itself. Too much cement will make the bonding of the sand with cement become weaker, while the render phase will struggle to properly flow and the final product will develop some small holes. While too much proportion of water will also affect also. Too much water will make the hydration process leave behind some excess water, while the excess water will lead to dusting of concrete. Dusting of concrete is like a layer of powder is formed on the surface of the pour cement render. So for the impact, as we know, poor workmanship in pour cement render and tilings will lead to uneven surface for the finishing floor, while the finishing floor will create a wavy surface for occupants. Some of the floor render will create a different color tones of finishing. Last but not least, poor finishing will eventually giving a poor aesthetic view for the occupants. The occupants will feel uncomfortable and inconvenienced. Well, this also goes to the tiles. Popping of tiles due to poor workmanship will also causing the problem and issue to the occupants. And the occupants that didn't notice the popping of tile will knock and slip. Wow, this figure shows the dusting of the concrete. As I mentioned earlier before, this is caused by excessive water is on the surface of the wearing before it hardening. For the alternative, the supervisor should carry out weekly inspection to make sure that the quality of work is secure. The worker will get further understanding of job and tasks, while this will reduce the risk of happening bad finishing in pour finishing. Before the starting of work, briefing and induction should be carried out. The supervisor should inform the requirement, precaution, and the quality of work. And the worker should fully understand what they should do while working. This will reduce the bad finishing in pour finishing. While the additional of machinery will also increase the efficiency of the work. For the example is power float. Power float is a type of machine that can smoothen the surface of pour render. And this picture shows the picture of the power float. While for the cause for the hollowness in pour cement render and tilings is the moisture trap between the pour render and tilings. When there is a moisture trap inside after the rendering work, when the surface is exposed to sunlight, the moisture will evaporate and eventually a void will be formed between the render and base. The void will become hollowness. For the structural cracking, if the building is affected by subsidence or other structural or impact damage, then it is inevitable that this damage will be mirrored to a greater or lesser degree to the finishing floor. While structural cracks are caused by a variety of issues like poor soil bearing, overloading, swollen soil, and poor construction site. Structural crack will tear the finishing floor apart and crack will occupied by void. From days to days, hollowness will be formed, while some of the hollowness also caused by chemical attack, while external cementitious render can come under chemical attack. Most common is sulfate attack. This occurs when tricalcium aluminate present in ordinary Portland cement react with any sulfate present to form attringite. Attringite formation is an expensive reaction, so it can causing cracking, bulging, or debonding in render. While before the starting of rendering work, the worker will clear all the dust, debris, and rubbish that left in the subfloor. While the unclean dust that left on the render will cause the bonding of the subfloor and outer render become weaker as existence of dust will act as a layer that hinder the subfloor to bond with wearing cause. As time passes, those layers will start to separate inside and eventually causing hollowness in floor render and tilings. While weather issue is one of the causes too. As we know, ceramic tiles is very tolerant to temperature extreme. The effects are that when the tile undergoes expansion and contraction when undergoes temperature and moisture change. The greater the effect of weather, the greater of tiling affected. And this phenomena is same as when glass crack when undergo hot light sun. Well, this figure shows the main reaction of sulfate attack on concrete. And we're just focusing on number 1. Formation of sulfate aluminide attringite by reaction of sulfate salt and C3A phase in cement. This will increase in volume of reaction product and it will cause expansion and spalling. For the impact, the first impact will be the tile itself. Since there is a void inside the tile, when the occupant steps on a tile, no support on tile and eventually the tile will rupture and cracking. Other than that, the maintenance cost for tile will be also counted and it is very costly and time wasting. This will also affect the owner routine indirectly. While for floor render work, if the render is repaired, there will be 2 color tones as the cement change with time and weather exposed. Even though with the same ingredient and same proportion of mixing. The old cement will accumulate dust from environment. As a result, the repair render will have different color with original floor. This indirectly giving a poor aesthetic view for the occupant. While the ways to overcome the hollowness in floor render is induction and briefing before the starting of work. Clearly explanation will avoid the mistake when work done, while the worker will take notice on the parts when hollowness form and happen. Better understanding on the cause and formation of hollowness will help the worker take more precaution while work. Other than that, carry out weekly inspection is also needed. Inspection will reduce the risk of hollowness happen in floor and tilings, and thus submit the final product in the best state. For the summary, most of the floor finishing defect measure caused by workmanship, and it can be prevented before the starting of work, while the maintenance cost after the work done is costly, especially when the whole floor need to be rectified. So better supervision and inspection will help to reduce the happen of bad finishing and hollowness in floor finishing. And this is the reference for my video presentation. This is the first page. And this is the second page. And this is the last page. And that's all for me.